Hi, and welcome to the Maven Sports Medicine Endurance Training blog. I'm Dr. Jerry Yu, one of the owners of Maven. And today I have with me a very well-known tri-coach in the area, Andy Nelson, who is not only a great coach, but he's also a ranked elite Xterra triathlete and a running specialist. And I've had the pleasure of taking care of a few of his athletes over the years. And I really like the way he trains his athletes, particularly. He pays a lot of attention to their injuries and to where they are individually. And so, having said that, Andy, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks.
So one of the things I wanted to know was how you got into triathlon as a competitor.
Everyone likes to laugh at this, but I tell them I got into it out of being lazy. So in 2001, the first year they had the New York City Triathlon was about 20 blocks from my house, and so I didn't want to travel to a race. So that's where I say I got it from being lazy. I had done several multi-day cycling events, and I've been a runner for many years, since I was about 6 years old. And so I knew how to run, so I got somebody to teach me how to swim, and I signed up for it, and I figured I'd roll out of bed and go to the start line that morning. But then during training, during the phases that you go through, my competitive side kicked in, and laziness went out the window.
How did you go from there into Xterra, or did you always want to get into that area?
Well, I'd done some mountain biking, and I enjoyed mountain biking, and I actually found that some of the people in the triathlon community that I met, the Ironman people, tended to be a little bit more intense than I liked. So I liked the way that the Xterra people were. I was looking for an excuse to buy a new mountain bike. So actually, the very next year, my first triathlon of the 2002 season was an Xterra.
Nice.
I broke my chain 3 times in that race. I learned how to use a chain tool on the course, and I finished the race, and I said I was hooked.
Wow. So that was a real race that got you going.
I was hooked on triathlon after the New York City Tri,
Yeah.
and I knew I liked the balance of the training for triathlon.
Definitely, I think it keeps, just by the nature of the way triathlon is, I feel like it definitely keeps people a little bit more injury free. That makes sense, because you're not specializing in any one.
I just like to say reduced.
Reduced. That's exactly true.
Because cars hit people sometimes.
That happens.
As Jerry knows.
Yeah, absolutely, too well. As far as your training philosophy and approach, how do you approach your athletes or your clients for them? Because you also do personal training too, right?
I do. I was a personal trainer for about 5 years before my first try.
Yeah.
And then right before the 2006 2005 season, and that was the year that I got to race elite. That was the beginning of it. I hired a coach. I hired the coach that was doing the local triathlon training clinic, and I kind of liked how he did it, but I felt like it was a little bit too cookie cutter. So I thought that I could do at least as good a job as him.
Right.
Now this guy did have his PhD minus dissertation in sighting, so he was obviously a great for swimming as far as that goes, and he had an ultra running background, but I just felt like it wasn't. I thought I could do at least as good a job as him, and given the personal training background that I had, I thought it would be easier to work with people based upon their limitations, and then work through those limitations through proper strength training and postural assessments, and using things like the functional movement screen and that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
It just, you find where someone does have function, and then you build upon that.
Definitely. I think that's one of the things that really makes Andy stand out as not only coach, but also as a personal trainer, where not only is he considering or keeping in mind the injuries and limitations of the person, but also where that foundation lies, he can progress them to a level that I think is a little better than other trainers out there as well. Andy, I know that on top of being a personal trainer, you're also somewhat of a CrossFit enthusiast.
Yes.
What's your experience with CrossFit?
It's funny, for it to be as tough as it is. I've worked out at several boxes across the country, mostly in the East. I moved to Tennessee at the end of 2012, and I found that the East Coast really has fantastic coaches for CrossFit. CrossFit I feel is only as good as its coaches. It's very muscle intensive,
Yep.
and there's a lot of neuromuscular adaptation that happens to make it, which ultimately translates quite well into the muscle strength that's needed for triathlon. I am a CrossFit endurance coach, so I felt that built on my USA Triathlon and my USA Track and Field quite nicely, so that I'm able to create stronger runners.
Right.
For distances up, I've coached people up to 50 miles.
Yeah.
50-mile running events, and I just find that strength breaks down, and through my own interest in all of these things, I started using CrossFit and strength training for hormonal balance. I found that cortisol levels were going through the roof on endurance athletes, especially when they would go do their long, slow distance.
Of course.
So I like to keep training under 90 minutes, mainly so that male testosterone will stay up and female estrogen will stay balanced. Because if you don't do the strength training, then the muscles break down.
Absolutely.
And then when they break down, the rest of you breaks.
I definitely agree with you. I'm also a CrossFit endurance coach, and soon to get my USA Triathlon coaching cert level 1. So I'm excited to do that. But I also agree from my own personal experience that my performance last year has been through the roof just by incorporating a lot of the cross-training principles, not only found in CrossFit, but also just in exercise physiology itself. And that's kind of what we're trying to do with Maven, is basically trying to get cross-training to become at a higher level than what's out there in the general public.
I'm a big fan of the dumbbell snatch, or even the regular snatch.
Yeah.
Because of how it makes the hips function.
Absolutely.
Because when we sit at desks and we sit in cars and we shorten this whole front chain, we can't open that up on the run.
Definitely not.
But we still try to open it up on the run, but we're limited. You know, you don't. It just spent 8 hours short.
Exactly.
Why are you going to try and make it long?
Exactly.
You know, so you have to do things. And when the glutes and the low back and the hips are stronger, then you're able to get a much more efficient running form. And by the time you get to that third phase of the triathlon, your running form is breaking down.
Absolutely. Let's talk about running form, actually, Andy. So it seems like to me, from the athletes I've treated from you, that you were definitely a stickler on form, which I think is really awesome. Can you tell me more about how you think about that?
Yes, I'm a big fan of drills.
Yeah.
In running, I really like because people feel like they can go out and run like a 5-year-old, and my 5-year-old looks awesome when he runs.
Sure.
There's nothing wrong with his form, you know. But he also doesn't really sit at a desk for 8 hours a day, and he'll run full speed until he's done, and then he stops and takes a break.
Right.
Well, we don't do that, you know. So we let our head do more of our running. Whereas if we were to feel how our body feels, then we run better. And we're always able to focus on how well we run.
Right.
So I like for people to do drills at the beginning, and if their form is a little rough, I like them to do drills in the middle of their run as well. When they can do the drills in the middle, now their brain has that signal again that this is how I'm supposed to lift my foot, and then you can just let it drop because gravity's going to pull it down anyway. So I'm not a fan of taking really long sprint strides, because if you're running even a 5K, a sprint stride is not the same. For that matter, the 100 runner has a different stride than the 800 runner, and then when you extend it out past there, it's yet a different form.
Right. Do you subscribe to any particular running method? Like, obviously, as part of the CrossFit endurance coaching, pose method is definitely something that they really subscribe to. Do you have a particular preference?
I like the drills for pose. And I think that pose is one of the better ways to teach people how to run. And pose is actually, it's mainly good in the drills and in the teaching that form to stay upright. But if you can run by how your body feels, and I actually recommend that you don't run with headphones, because you can only listen to one thing at a time, and I prefer you to listen to your body when you run. If you're putting in headphones to block out the pain, well then that's pain that you should be listening to. When it hurts, you run differently. So if you can use that as a tool to teach you to run better, then you run better. The drills will teach your feet to land under you. So I really love the pose drills. I love the pose technique, but here again you go into an individual level, and that you run how you run. You know, Tom runs how Tom runs, Jerry runs how Jerry runs, I run how I run. Now, if I'm getting hurt all the time and I'm having to come see Jerry to put me back together, I'm not running right. And you have to use that. I'm a big fan of doing barefoot drills in the grass, because if you crush your heel when you run, because you're running in thick shoes and you're trying to feel for the ground, well then you're probably going to injure something further up the chain.
I definitely agree with you, and we've seen that a lot in runners ourselves here at Maven.
I spent 3 years changing my run stride.
Really?
3 years. It wasn't fast. You know, I've been running since I was 6. I'll be 40 next month. So, you know, I started changing. So from 34 to 37, I really spent a lot of time. I spent more time working on my running drills than I spent on working on my endurance. And I've been largely injury free. I rarely had any injuries to begin with, but things hurt less.
What are some of the things or most common injuries that you have seen in your athletes?
Knees and hips due to IT band, and that can be worked out with the roller, the stick, proper PT, band walking with the band around your knees and your ankles, sideways walking, as well as working on external rotation of the hips to where you take the knee out. And some would say, well, why would you do that? Well, when you can turn on the glute medius, then the IT band isn't having to stabilize your butt. Instead, now you have the glute medius that's stabilizing your hip so that you can progress forward instead of having that IT band get overworked. Women tend to have it a little rougher because their hips do sit wider, and we tend to run on a rail instead of on tracks. So it's like when you land running, one foot lands in front of the other because it has to land under your center of mass, instead of to the side of your center of mass like it would when you walk. So when you can train the muscles of the body to support and then progress you forward, and then you can teach the core to be stronger, and then you're able to keep that forward lean a little bit better, and then you can control your speed based upon how far forward you're leaning.
Definitely. And final technical question: are there a couple key drills that you recommend your clients do?
I really like the it's called the foot pop drill, and if you like, I can demonstrate if you like. But I really like the foot pop because you're teaching the heel to come straight up to the butt, not forward and not back. If we leave the leg back behind us, well then we have to drag it forward, and then we're probably going to overcompensate and land on our heel. Whereas if you can do that lift and then just teach the body to lift, you'll also see whether the hips shift around or not, and then you can teach the body to just stabilize on one leg like a stork.
Actually, have to keep it this way. We'll go back to that.
when you can keep yourself to start by balancing this way, and then teach yourself to shift, 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 shift.
And what's that called again? The pop-up drill?
Just foot pop. I call it about popping that foot right up off the ground. And I just find that that's something that's super simple to do, and anybody can do it. And it just teaches the brain to fire the hamstring instead of the quad, which certainly for triathlon makes it a little smoother because your quads are usually fried after the bike.
Definitely, yeah. So final question is, if we have any athletes out there who want to get in touch with you about your coaching services, how can they do that?
I can be reached at Andy at TriCoachAndy, which is very simple. The website launches around the 19th of March. I also have a blog, Get Fit NYC, Fitness for Everybody blog. There's a lot of information on there. Sometimes some healthy recipes. I try not to get on a rant too much, but it is the blogosphere.
Absolutely, yeah, exactly. Well, thank you very much for joining us today, and we'll be back another time for some more information on how you can get to a higher level of fitness and also to a better level of training for your next endurance sports event. Thank you.
All right.